And what if the truest kind of love is not the one that bursts into existence like fire at first glance, but the one that finds its way back, again and again, through time, distance, and silence? Perhaps some love stories don't begin when two people meet. Perhaps they began long before that, written not in ink or memory, but in the fabric of something eternal. As if the cosmos itself had woven two destinies together with threads finer than breath, spun from the silence between stars. These are the stories that are not born, but remembered, stories that live in the soul before they are lived in the world. There is a kind of connection that cannot be explained in words, only felt in the trembling of the heart, in the pause between breaths, in the unspoken knowing that passes between two gazes. It is a connection bound not by logic or circumstance, but by an invisible thread, one so ancient and resilient that even lifetimes cannot undo it. It weaves through the chaos of the world, through missed chances, broken paths, and aching wounds, refusing to be severed. This thread does not pull with urgency, but with a quiet persistence, as if something sacred were calling two souls back to each other. When two souls are truly meant to find one another, no amount of noise, distraction, or passing years can drown out the echo that calls them home. Even in the absence of understanding, even when every rational reason says to walk away, the pull remains. There is something greater at work, something we cannot see, but which we deeply feel. It is not merely attraction, it is not comfort, it is recognition, not of the other, but of the self within the other. This is where Carl Jung's analytical psychology offers a doorway into understanding something so ineffable. According to Jung, these soul-deep connections are not coincidences or romantic fantasies. They are manifestations of the deeper currents moving beneath the surface of our conscious lives. They arise from the collective unconscious, where ancient symbols and archetypes live, waiting to be awakened by an encounter that stirs something timeless within us. In this video, we will dive into those depths, beneath the surface of personality and circumstance, to explore how Jung's ideas shed light on this phenomenon. What is it that makes us feel like we've known someone forever, even if we've just met? Why do some connections feel like fate rather than choice? And why do these encounters, no matter how brief or complicated, change us so profoundly? Prepare yourself to see love not just as emotion or attachment, but as transformation, as a symbolic, sacred process that guides us toward the truth of who we are. When the soul meets what it recognizes as familiar, perhaps from another time or another life, it is not only reunion that takes place, it is awakening. These destined meetings ignite something powerful within the psyche. They stir archetypes from their slumber, ancient images that Jung called the anima and the animus, representing the feminine in the masculine psyche and the masculine in the feminine. When two people cross paths and recognize each other at this level, it is more than falling in love. It is an activation of symbols embedded deep within the soul, calling each person toward wholeness. And yet, this is not a fairy tale. These connections, as luminous as they may be, are rarely easy. On the contrary, the deeper the bond, the more shadows rise to the surface. Jung described the shadow as the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or are afraid to see. When a connection is this real, it does not only show us the light, it mirrors our darkness too. We see our wounds, our patterns, our defenses, and that mirror, raw and merciless, is also a gift. Because the purpose of such love is not comfort. It is not even happiness in the traditional sense. It is growth. It is transformation. It is evolution. Two destined souls do not come together just to hold hands. They come together to awaken each other, to disturb the stagnant waters, to shatter illusions and ignite the process that Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming one's truest, fullest self. To love someone at this depth is to step into sacred territory. It means walking through fire, together or apart. It means confronting everything within ourselves that is unhealed, unloved, or unknown. But it also means touching the divine, not in the heavens, but in each other. And that is why these souls cannot be separated. Not truly. For theirs is not a love of convenience or even of compatibility. It is a love forged in the soul, meant to unearth truth, to break walls, and to lead each person back, not to each other necessarily, but to themselves. Love, particularly that love which arrives cloaked in a sense of fated inevitability, as though written not merely in the stars, but carved into the architecture of the soul itself, is not only a vessel of warmth, connection, and transcendence. It is also a sacred yet volatile territory where the unconscious reveals its face, where projections take root and the shadow begins to stir. Carl Jung, the depth psychologist of soul and symbol, reminds us that the more powerful a connection feels, especially those that carry the weight of cosmic significance, the more likely it is that we are not simply loving the other as they truly are, but projecting onto them what lies hidden within ourselves. Love becomes a mirror, a stage upon which the psyche enacts its silent dramas, often without our knowing. Projection is not a conscious choice. It is a psychological reflex, a process through which we unconsciously assign to another person the qualities, fears, desires, longings, or wounds that we have not yet made peace with in ourselves. In ordinary relationships, this projection may be subtle or fleeting. But in relationships touched by what feels like destiny, those rare and soul-shaking unions, the intensity of the emotional field amplifies everything. The symbolic weight of the bond activates something ancient and primal within us. In such a space, what was once sleeping now wakes. As if stirred by the presence of the other, aspects of the psyche that had been dormant, forgotten dreams, buried traumas, disowned strengths, rise to the surface. We do not merely see the other person, we see through them, as though they were a screen upon which our deepest narratives are being played out. We do not simply love, they become in our minds salvation, healing, homecoming. And yet, they also awaken within us the darker currents, anger we never dared to express, wounds from childhood we believed had closed, fears of abandonment we had silenced. At first, this projection is dazzling. It is spellbinding. We believe we have found the answer to every question our heart has ever asked. The beloved appears as the missing piece, the long-awaited echo to our silent song. It is as though, after a lifetime of wandering through the labyrinth of our own soul, we have finally stumbled upon the one who holds the thread. But eventually, as time passes and the ideal begins to fade, cracks appear in the projection. The image we cast upon them begins to falter under the weight of reality. The mask slips, and the person before us reveals themselves, not as a savior or flawless reflection, but as a human being with flaws, with their own wounds, with their own shadow. And in that unveiling, our own hidden self is illuminated too. This moment, when the illusion breaks, is not the end of love, but its crucifixion and rebirth. It is a sacred rupture, an invitation to move beyond the enchantment of fantasy and into the raw, transformative ground of truth. This is where romantic love dies, but only so that deeper love may be born. A love that does not seek perfection, but presence. A love that does not demand salvation, but participation. A love that can hold contradiction, complexity, and even pain. And it is here that the shadow steps forward. Jung defines the shadow as the sum total of all that we repress, deny, ignore, or have yet to recognize in ourselves. It is the part of us that we are taught to exile, the envy, the rage, the neediness, the shame, the wildness. The shadow does not disappear simply because we ignore it. It waits. And love, especially fated love, wakes it up. In the presence of the beloved, our shadow finds voice. It may rise as jealousy that catches us off guard, as rage that seems disproportionate, as deep insecurities or control disguised as concern. It feels, often, like the other is the one causing these feelings. But in truth, they are only the mirror. The storm belongs to us. This is the sacred function of a soul-deep connection. It calls us inward. It confronts us with all that we have hidden. And though painful, this confrontation is not a curse. It is an opportunity, an invitation to heal, to see, to become whole. These conflicts, these emotional fires that erupt within a soul connection, are not signs that something has gone wrong. On the contrary, they are proof that something real is occurring. The soul does not come into contact with destiny without trembling, and that trembling is sacred. True love, authentic, grounded, luminous in its maturity, is not built in the absence of difficulty. It is built through the fire of shared vulnerability. It is forged when two people are willing not only to see each other's light, but also to hold space for each other's darkness. When they no longer flee from the shadows that rise between them, but choose to face them together. When the projections begin to dissolve, what remains is something quieter but infinitely more enduring. Not the rush of fantasy, but the depth of recognition. The realization that love is not the disappearance of pain, but the willingness to meet pain with presence. That healing does not mean returning to who we were before the wound, but becoming more fully who we are through it. In this space, we no longer see the beloved as the cause of our suffering. We begin to ask, what is this jealousy revealing about my own unhealed fears? What is this abandonment stirring in the child within me who still longs to be held? What does this frustration say about the parts of myself I have not yet accepted? By sitting with these questions, honestly and without judgment, a new path opens, a path of individuation, not away from love, but within it. The relationship itself becomes the crucible for transformation. It ceases to be a place of emotional dependency and becomes a fertile ground for the growth of two souls, side by side, yet sovereign. A soul connection is not a fairy tale. It is not a perfect story written to avoid discomfort. It is a summons, a call to truth, a call to awaken. And when that call is answered, not with fantasy but with maturity, the bond deepens into something that surpasses the emotional. It enters the realm of the spiritual. There are relationships that distract, that numb, that entertain. And then there are those rare ones that awaken. The union between destined souls belongs to the latter. In this deeper perspective of the soul, eternal love is not a fairy tale built on constant happiness or the absence of hardship. Rather, it is a profound and transformative journey towards self-awareness and inner growth. Some may dismiss these ideas as overly romantic or naive, but analytical psychology teaches us otherwise. Jung showed us that archetypes are not just abstract concepts or figments of imagination. They are powerful, living energies that influence our thoughts, emotions, and choices. Eternal love is one of these archetypes. It is not a fleeting emotion, but a deep current running beneath the surface of our lives, pulling us towards something timeless, beyond the confines of space, matter, and even death itself. It is this quiet yearning for what transcends the temporal that gives certain connections their unforgettable quality. When two souls encounter each other under the influence of this archetype, the experience defies explanation. No logic can define it. No physical separation can diminish it, because what binds these souls together is not merely affection, not even compatibility, but a profound recognition, a memory of oneness. It is as though something ancient awakens, reminding us that we are not isolated fragments, but pieces of a larger whole, longing to return to the sacred unity through the path of love. Though the idea that nothing can separate two destined souls might sound absolute, it's essential to understand that in the symbolic language of Jungian psychology, separation is not the opposite of union. It is an essential part of it. Just as every mythological hero must face trials, loss, and exile before transformation, true love too must go through cycles of silence, solitude, and apparent disconnection. These separations are not the end of love. Rather, they become the sacred crucibles through which love is purified, deepened, and matured. In the symbolic world of the psyche, distance serves a higher purpose. Jung believed that time and separation are tools of the self, the organizing center of the unconscious, which works in quiet, mysterious ways to move our life experiences, synchronicities, and even heartbreaks toward awakening. When two souls are truly destined, their reunion does not depend on longing or insistence. It depends on the psychic maturity of each individual. Each person must walk their own unique path, confront their inner darkness, heal old wounds, and cultivate self-reliance before they can truly meet the other soul again. Not as a crutch, but as a mirror. In this sense, separation is not a punishment, but a rite of passage. It demands that we look inward, release the illusion that another person can fill our inner emptiness, and instead reconnect with the essence of who we are. The space created by distance invites the soul to stop projecting idealized images onto the other and begin loving from a place of fullness rather than need. Often, these soul-bonded relationships begin with profound intensity, as if the universe conspired to bring them together. But after the initial enchantment, the connection may crack or fall apart. The pain that follows can be immense, creating confusion and emotional turmoil. But through the lens of the soul, we come to understand that something essential is happening beneath the surface. In the silence of distance, unconscious material begins to rise. Old patterns, inherited wounds, and protective ego structures start to dissolve. Only in this sacred stillness can the deeper work of individuation take place. This stage is especially crucial when projections begin to dissolve, the moment when we stop seeing the other as an ideal and begin to face their true self. At that point, we are faced with a choice: to turn away in fear or to stay and do the work with courage. When the love is genuine, separation becomes not a breaking point, but a moment of recalibration. It creates the space for both individuals to rebuild themselves from within, to grow stronger, more aware, and more whole. Jung emphasized that individuation, the process of becoming our true self, requires symbolic separation. We must detach not only from the people we depend on, but also from the unconscious patterns that keep us from evolving. In this light, separation becomes a sacred threshold. It is through this very detachment that the archetype of eternal love is revealed in its truest form, not as attachment or dependence, but as a deep spiritual fidelity, even in the absence of touch, contact, or certainty. And even after the most painful break, when no communication remains, something often lingers, a quiet, enduring bond. This is not mere nostalgia or sentimentality. It is the silent echo of the archetypal connection, a subtle inner knowing that, despite time and distance, something meaningful endures. That sense is not logical or measurable, but it is deeply felt, undeniable, and often life-changing. Many such reunions only become possible when both people have stopped needing each other to feel complete. When love is no longer about filling a void, but about choosing from a place of wholeness, that is when the true reunion can occur. And when it does, it is no longer built on illusion, but on authenticity. The wounds of the past are not erased, but they are integrated. Time, once experienced as absence and grief, becomes the silent healer. And the bond that forms from that place becomes not just romantic, but spiritual. This cycle of meeting and parting, of connecting and separating, is not a flaw in soul-level love. It is part of its rhythm. Like the inhale and exhale of breath, this flow is necessary. One cannot exist without the other. It teaches us that time is not the enemy of destined souls. It is the path by which they are shaped. Those who endure the pain of separation with open hearts eventually realize that they were never truly apart, because this kind of love is not measured by how often you see each other or how frequently you speak, but by the depth of recognition between two souls. And once that recognition happens, it cannot be undone. It may evolve, it may transform, but it never disappears. It lives on, in silence, in memory, in growth, and in every quiet moment when the soul remembers. In the end, true love is not about holding on tightly or never letting go. It's about learning how to remain inwardly connected, even when life demands physical distance. Some connections defy reason. They do not follow the logic of the world or obey the clock of linear time. They emerge from a place deeper than thought, quieter than speech, and stronger than any external bond. When two souls are destined, everything that happens, the joy, the silence, the longing, the distance, is part of a greater orchestration, the awakening of consciousness. This kind of love doesn't just comfort us, it calls us, it heals us, and it brings us ever closer to the truth of who we really are. So if these words stirred something inside you, don't ignore it. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the video on the screen right now will take you even deeper into this sacred journey of self-discovery and soulful reunion, because what is truly meant always finds its way.